we should dive in and talk about the Golden Globe nominations that dropped this morning. We always record on a Monday, and so we got the Golden Globe nominations this morning. And as we like to do, we like to talk about obviously some of the things that we expected, but of course, there's always surprises. There's I suppose perceived snubs. There are things that are likely missing in terms of what certain films or actors could have been potentially considered, but it's also just another potential precursor and possible indicator at how some of these other voting bodies and some of these other award shows might look like over the course of the next couple of months as we start to really enter into kind of the fever pitch of award season. This is, of course, also coming off of recently the Gotham Awards happened here in New York City. There's been a lot of top 10s published by voting bodies such as NBR. So things are starting to really shape up in terms of like who are the main films, what are the main films, and who are a lot of the actors and filmmakers that are going to be recognized. And the Golden Globes, who have been through their own fair share of transitional periods, continues to be probably one of the most interesting shows to really examine because, to be honest, like I never really know how to take any of these nominations. It often just throws me off every time they drop these, just because it's it can be somewhat indicative, but I think in a lot of cases it's not indicative at all in terms of what the future might look like with other upcoming shows. But last year they did go through again a lot of transition, as I mentioned. The Hollywood Foreign Press, which used to run the Golden Globes, no longer exists. They were disbanded because there was a ton of scandal. And so now there is a group of about 300 international journalists who do essentially vote on these films and vote on the nominees for these particular categories. Golden Globes is also interesting because they do tend to split in a number of categories, musical and comedy versus drama. Those often exist in two separate categories and who could win there. They also acknowledge TV as well. I do want to focus more on the movies here because we've talked a lot about TV. The Emmys have already passed this year. But this is going to be really interesting just based on some of the things that came out. Netflix was kind of a big winner. They lead all main distributors with a total of 26 nominations. And then followed by that is A24 with 12 overall nominations. And then in third place, HBO and Max comes in second, with 14 overall nominations. And, really kind of the big winners here are Emilia Perez, again, represented by Netflix, leading the movie field with 10 nominations. And then coming in right after that is The Brutalist with 7 nominations, which is going to be coming out wide very soon. Conclave is right behind that with 6 nominations, and then Anora and The Substance are tied at 5 nominations. And quickly to acknowledge the television side of things, The Bear leads the TV side of things with 5 nominations. Shogun is right behind that with 4, and same as well with Only Murders in the Building with 4 nominations. We'll get to some of these specific categories again, I think, when we talk about the movies. But overall, what are you thinking? When you see the nominations and you see like what's been heavily acknowledged, maybe some of the things that were somewhat ignored or didn't maybe get as much of attention as we might have initially thought. What's your overall just sort of big picture thoughts about these nominations for the Golden Globes?
It's really interesting because, you talk about how, the Golden Globes, I think previously or the past couple years before last year, I would never take this award show into account of what might be to come even a little bit. I'm like, the Globes are the Globes. They're going to nominate what they want to nominate. But after last year, after throwing out the Hollywood Foreign Press, after getting this new body, I'm kind of coming into this mindset with old Globes, new Globes, kind of thing. And I do think in slow motion, the Globes is becoming a little bit more of like, okay, maybe this is giving us a little bit of insight what might happen in some of these other award shows, at least more than some of those previous years. And here, to be honest, when these nominations come out, I'm like, there's not a lot of surprises here. There's a little bit of surprises, but I'm like, this is, I think, somewhat, indicative of at least the mindset I had for the most part. There's some things in there I still am questioning of what's going on here, but I think one of the more notable, I think, categories for me that I was confused in is Best Director. That was kind of throwing me off because, there's no Denis and there's no John Chu. And I think the reason that confused me was because I'm like, did these movies direct themselves? Like Dune and Wicked are arguably 2 of the biggest movies of the year. And so I was like, dang, y'all really not gonna acknowledge those 2 really ginormous movies. And I think maybe that's maybe that's the old Globes. Maybe this is the new Globes looking at things very differently. But yeah, that's just one of the, I think the early things that I wanted to bring up was that best director category. But other than that, a lot of stuff here makes a lot of sense. Very proud of Nickel Boys for getting in here. Haven't seen it yet, but just the word of mouth and everything. It was one of those ones. I was like, I don't know if Nickel Boys is going to make it. So very happy that Nickel Boys made it in. And then man, other than that, is of course a couple films that haven't come out that we haven't seen yet that I'm excited to get to. But man, for the most part, I would say a lot of this feels right to me.
The Globes continues to be unserious for me. It's a really unserious show, I think, across the board. And as we just progress throughout the years, though they have made changes, and I acknowledge and applaud those changes, it's just one
Mm-hmm.
of those things where I think more and more, and it's not even exclusive to the Globes. It's really all of these bodies, all of these top 10 lists, whatever it may be. Like none of it. I mean, they all
Mm-hmm.
mean their own individual things, but none of it truly is indicative to me of like what
Mm-hmm.
we might see with the Oscars. Like every single year, we come and have these conversations, and then when the Oscars rolls around, oftentimes we do always see pretty much in all the major above the line categories, at least, where it's like, yeah, there wasn't really any sort of indication that things were going to align with what we had seen up until that point. And I think that's largely because like we have to remember who are the people behind these particular shows and bodies, like who's actually voting on these things.
Mm-hmm.
There's not always that much overlap in between these different bodies. Like really the only significant overlap that you see is with the guilds. When the SAGs
Mm-hmm.
rolls around, the
Right.
DGAs, things like that, there's obviously overlap there between those bodies and then of course who's a part of the academy, but it's not 100%. You know, not everybody
Right.
that's in SAG is a member of the academy. It doesn't work that way. Here you have international journalists, none of them are voting on the academy. That's very
Mm-hmm.
unlikely that's going to be the case. People who vote on the Gothams, like that's a very small body of New York critics. All of these things, like there's not really a ton of overlap, so of course there's going to be consistency. There's going to be
Right.
films that obviously rise to the top, largely just because of reception and how they're perceived by the people that see them. But this is just another case of it's all over the place. It's somewhat random in many of these categories where they're not even adhering to some of their own rules, and
Mm-hmm.
it just at this point it's like I'll enjoy the show. It's probably going to be a decent or entertaining show. It's often been acknowledged as like the biggest party of the year because folks get sloppy drunk at the ceremony. But in terms of like who wins, who loses, and even like who's in the lead here in terms of recognition and acknowledgement, it doesn't really mean anything to me at this point. It's just like, okay, we'll see what happens when the show rolls around, and then of course like when other nominees come out. But let's talk about the movies. So best picture drama, and again they do split these up, so we have best picture musical or comedy as well. But best picture drama, we have The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nickel Boys, and September 5. And again, here as I said at the top, 6 nominations. That is not the same as the traditional 5 nominations for the Academy. But then, of course, the
Right.
Academy with its best picture field, it does include 10 overall nominations. And so when you take these two together, we'll get 12. But thoughts on best picture drama? Some of the films that are represented here. What do you think?
Very, very interesting. Again, still a little bit surprised by Nickel Boys in September 5. If I had a list of more dramas in my mind, just again the way some things have been feeling, those are like 7 and 8. But again, very, very surprised to see Nickel Boys here, but very proud, of course, to see Dune, one of my favorite movies of the year, of course. Big spectacle. Conclave, been seeing, very good movie. Been seeing a lot of Conclave being in more and more conversations as time goes on. Of course, when that movie came out, people liked it, but it's very interesting to see the award run, at least in terms of nominations, that Conclave might actually have. But Brutalist, Complete Unknown, Nickel Boy, September 5. A lot of movies we haven't seen yet. I'm very curious to get to. So I can only say so much because I've only seen Conclave and Dune. So yeah, I don't know. Very interesting best pictures here.
Well, regardless of not seeing them, these all align. I think with just like what's been bubbling up in terms of like end of the year conversation. Like The Brutalist
Yeah,
has a lot of momentum at this particular
for sure.
point, and it's had a lot of momentum ever since it premiered earlier this year. And I think that that's just like one of the big sort of behemoths rolling into the season, of
Hmm.
course. And then A Complete Unknown. This is interesting because this is the Bob Dylan biopic
Yep.
starring Timothy Chalamet. What I find interesting about this movie, and again, this is why this is all just like very unserious to me. James Mangold, phenomenal director, is behind this movie. A few years ago, 15 or so years ago at this point, he also directed Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash
Mm-hmm.
biopic. That movie was also nominated for Golden Globes, but that was in the musical or comedy category because
Mm.
this is a musical. At the end of the
There's
day, it's
music
it's
in it.
it's
Yep.
it's a dramatic, retelling of their life story. But there's a lot of music in these movies. So same director, same pedigree, probably a very similar style of movie, focusing on a few years in this musician's life. But here, it's landed in drama as opposed to musical or comedy. But then
Mm-hmm.
Walk the Line all those years ago, it actually won like 3 Golden Globes that year. So I do find that interesting, at least to point out. Dune Part Two, I'm glad to see that here. I don't know what it really means in terms of just the overall run because this is like one of I think 2 nominations that Dune Part Two got this
Yeah.
year at the Golden Globes. It was largely ignored for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And the Golden Globes doesn't really pay too much attention to any technical categories. It's mostly performance based, and so I think any heavy lifting that Dune could have done, it just wouldn't really get acknowledged here because of that very
Yeah.
fact. And then the other ones, Nickel Boys and September 5, not surprised about either of those. Let's talk about musical or comedy. We have Anora, Challengers, Emilia Perez, A Real Pain, The Substance, and Wicked. And what I think about this category is that if we were to look ahead and think about potential best picture nominees for the Academy Awards, I think you have
Yeah.
more that exist within the musical or comedy sort of category here than exist in drama. Because I envision we'll see Wicked, we'll see Emilia
Mm-hmm.
Perez maybe end up in that category, and Anora is I think probably a surefire lock. And then the drama category, probably Brutalist,
Mm-hmm.
Conclave, a complete
Yep.
unknown. I would likely say Nickel Boys. I'm not entirely
Yeah.
sure,
I'm
but
not sold on Nickel
it,
Boys.
it
Yeah.
it's interesting though to see sort of the split here. But yeah, what are your just sort of like first thoughts when you look at the musical or comedy category?
Yeah, yeah, this is a category where I'm like, ooh, all of this makes complete sense to me. I think, to be honest, the only thing that was hard, I think, for me was are people going to start recognizing the substance? That was like the big thing to me. Is like, is substance going to start getting in here? And I think this is at least a good showing for like, oh shoot, people see the substance, and I'm not sure what it means for it yet. Like you said, we have to see more shows, and it might not be indicative of anything, but I'm just happy the substance exists here. I was worried for it, but everything else makes a ton of sense to me. Anora, Challengers, these all feel like, of course, very very well deserved films, of course, but also the way the Globes is going, it's like, yeah, I almost can't see any other six being part of it here. Like 7, 8 is like maybe like Saturday night, a different man, but no, I think this is the right picks across the board.
The Substance, I mean, again, international voting body, that's a French film. So,
Yeah.
of course, they're going to, I think, lean heavily into some of that international representation, which doesn't stop here. There's definitely some other categories where that's the case. I do think, in terms of like widespread recognition from an award standpoint, this is where it's going to start and stop for the Substance. I don't think it'll go
Mm-hmm.
anywhere past this, even though that is one of my favorite movies of the year. I think it's phenomenal. And then Anora, again, that's kind of, I think, the front runner across the board. Not much to say there.
For sure.
Challengers is also interesting because Luca Guadagnino is having a really, really good year. Just also released Queer, starring Daniel Craig. So he's been very
Mm-hmm.
busy this year. But Challengers, to sort of circle back around this conversation after coming out last March, I think that was.
It's been a while.
Again, I don't think it'll go too far in terms of like the rest of the award season per se, but again, another one of my favorite films of the year that I'm just glad to see get some acknowledgement. Now, Wicked is obviously that's a big film, obviously, to talk about, that just came out. It's on a lot of people's minds and attention. That actually just won Best Movie of the Year from the National Board of Review, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous, to be honest, but it did win that Best Film of the Year award, and I do think that it is gaining a lot of momentum. And the Best Picture conversation, again, when we talk about the Oscars, and there will be 10 nominees,
Right.
it almost seems like a surefire thing that Wicked kind of has to be a part of that, right? Like, it seems like, just
Yeah.
based on the amount of attention it's getting and the fact that it has been somewhat, I think, of a weaker year in terms of movies. Now you have like a bigger picture that most people have seen. A lot of eyeballs have been on it, and that's like another conversation. Like, how can we have these award shows and talk about movies that a lot of people just haven't seen, to be frank. That's another
Mm-hmm.
piece of the puzzle. But it almost seems like Wicked is just like, I think, ready to take off, and sort of just kind of be on the conversation, at least for the next few months. A Real Pain, love that film. Love to see it here also as well. And then Emilia Perez, which I just kind of want to quickly talk about. Again, 10 nominations across the board, most
Yeah.
nominated film. It's not like universally beloved though. This is a very, very,
Mm-hmm.
very divisive movie. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I think since its release, like since more people have been able to see it, it's also kind of getting drugged through the mud in certain respects. Like a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
actually detest the film. They've been lambasting it. But Netflix has campaigned heavily for this. And what I find interesting is that based on what I've heard and based on just sort of reading and other things, I don't know if Emilia Perez in actuality is going to go far in terms of the Academy Award race. Like I know that
Mm-hmm.
they're campaigning heavily and it's obviously a big, big look here, 10 nominations, but I don't know if it's going to be nominated for Best Picture. I don't know if those performances are going to, rise to the top, and actually get recognition. It is one of those
Yeah.
films that's a little bit more challenging and it could stop here. We could kind of see like the start and stop of this movie in terms of what success it might achieve from a critical and award standpoint. Maybe end at the show. It's a little tough to call, but I'm not totally convinced that it will go beyond just what it's going to be recognized for the Globes here.
Yeah, it has been really interesting to see the progression of this film as time goes on. I will say, I think for the way Netflix is going to campaign, I like you said, I don't know if it'll end up in Best Picture, but I do think it'll still do something in terms of Best International Feature. I think it'll still have some sort of shot, I think, in that specific category when it comes to the Academy Awards. But yeah, in terms of the 10 we'll get out of the Academy Awards, I don't know. It's really hard, especially seeing some of these other movies be a little, again, like on the cusp of, oh wow, you're making it into the 10 that I guess I didn't envision before. Before it was like, yeah, Amelia Perez would probably be in there, but now seeing some of these other films, it's like, maybe it doesn't make it, come time. And so yeah, I think we'll have to see.
And again, it's a French film, so another international picture. And what's going to be difficult about it is just like the fact that it defies a lot of genres. It's so many different types of films.
Yeah.
Often, I think as a detriment, it doesn't really work when it tackles all of these different genres. There's some things that it does exceptionally well. I'm a bit
Mm-hmm.
mixed on it, but I think that just the genre defying logic of the movie itself and just the storytelling mechanisms and some of those other elements, I don't know if it's gonna resonate all that well, especially with Academy Award voting members.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and if it does get nominated, in the Best International Feature category, I don't think it's going to win by any stretch, even if it does get
Mm-hmm.
nominated. So I'm just really curious to see like what the campaign trail looks like as Emilia Perez continues to take shape. The acting categories: Best Actress from a Drama, we have Pamela Anderson for The Last Showgirl, Angelina Jolie for Maria, Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl, Tilda Swinton for The Room Next Door, Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here, and Kate Winslet for Lee. Across these six, these are all movies I've not seen yet, so I can't speak on the performances per se. But
Mm-hmm.
what I did talk about last week is just the fact that the Best Actress category, I think across the board, is just going to be really, really competitive this year,
Yeah.
and it's going to be really, really difficult. But I do anticipate that at least three of these are likely going to move ahead and kind of be front runners for the Academy. Those being Angelina Nicole and Tilda Swinton. The other three, Kate Winslet, that's kind of coming out of nowhere, but she is a double nominee this year. She was also
Mm-hmm.
nominated for The Regime. Pamela
Mm-hmm.
Anderson, I've heard incredible things about The Last Showgirl. I'm very excited about that. But
Yeah.
this also feels like something that I think a Golden Globes show would particularly highlight, a film of that
Mm-hmm.
nature, based on what I've heard. And Fernanda Torres, I just don't know enough about. I'm Still Here as well. So yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on this particular category?
Yeah, it's just really rare that when Best Actress comes out in a award show, I haven't seen any of the films. It's like the first time. I feel like that's usually I'll see at least one or two. I'm like, dang, I ain't seen none of these movies. But I am hearing Angelina Jolie and Maria might be current front runner, and not only in the show in terms of some other shows, as well. Also, the Globes just kind of love Kate Winslet. They kind of always have, which
Everybody
is
loves
really
Kate
interesting.
Winslet.
Yeah, everybody loves Kate Winslet. It's like, oh, here's Kate Winslet again. So here she is making it again. But I'm actually, outside of that, I'm excited to see all these performances. Like, I'm really excited to see Pamela Anderson, The Last Showgirl, like you said, hearing good things about that. It feels very keen to what Golden Globes is known for. But it'll be really cool, I think, to see hopefully all these people in the building come Golden Globes. It's going to be a star-studded room, man. It'll be interesting to see who actually picks up the Globe here, especially since I haven't seen any of these films yet. Of course, by the time I probably would have, but man, it'll be cool to see regardless.
For sure. Moving on to next category, Best Actor for a Drama. We have Adrian Brody for The Brutalist, Timothy Chalamet for A Complete Unknown, Daniel Craig for Queer, Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, Ray Fiennes for Conclave, and Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice. Should also mention Sebastian Stan, another double nominee. He was also nominated in the musical or comedy category for his performance in A Different Man. So just love what he's been doing. It's not even like post-MCU career because he's technically still in the MCU, but the cachet he's taken from his MCU career and the projects that he's taken on since then, I think he's probably had the best career outside of the MCU of really any of his peers. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about Chris Evans and just kind of wondering like what's going on here, like what are we doing post Steve Rogers. But Sebastian Stan, I mean, I loved him in The Apprentice. The movie is okay. Didn't really talk about it because I saw it like a week before the election, and then the election happened, so didn't think it was the right time. But I loved him in that movie. And then A Different Man is another one I still have to see, but I know it's like a very darkly it performance. And then the rest of the people in this category, I actually think that this is probably the one category where it won't be one for one. I don't anticipate, but I think this will be pretty close come Academy Award season, where we're seeing most of these names here probably end up in that conversation, probably minus Daniel Craig. That's like the one where I'm like, I don't know, because Queer is also another divisive film. Again, Luca Guadagnino. But the rest of these guys, Sebastian Stan is also complicated for numerous reasons. But Ray Fiennes, Coleman Domingo, Timothy Chalamet, and Adrian Brody, those feel like four that are likely going to be there by the time Oscar nominations come out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, and this feels this all feels right to me, and it makes sense. I think it will be a one for one. I honestly can't think of much outside of this that it would be, because they're not doing Paul Mescal, they're not doing John David Washington. I don't think they're not doing Kingsley Benadir. So I think this is it. I think this is the one for one. But I also think, as of right now, the way things are going, until some winners start to pop up, this is extremely competitive. I don't know how this is going to swing. Usually I have like some small indication or feel, but I really don't know who's going to win here. But yeah, I think it's competitive in this category, and I also think it'll be one for one.
Oh, I know it's gonna be Brody for sure.
Yeah,
1,000%. I mean, the Brutalist is going to it's going to clean up for sure. I mean, just like Anora is going to clean up, the Brutalist is like the other film that's emerging is like that's the one of the year. So I have no. Now, and I don't even care about here, but just in general, I think
just in general.
The case. The best supporting categories. I mean, I don't really have a ton to say about those, but Denzel Washington didn't get nominated for Gladiator 2, which is interesting because of some of our comments, but also Kieran Culkin was nominated for A Real Pain. He's incredible, although it's really a co-lead performance, but that's just one of those things where it's like, are we really going to spend time talking about category fraud? Does it really matter? I don't know. Jeremy Strong was nominated for The Apprentice. He's incredible in that movie, so I love that he was acknowledged here. Again, I think that movie, it's worth seeing for the performances alone. And then on the supporting actress side of things, we saw Selena Gomez get nominated for Emilia Perez, another double nominee. She was also acknowledged for Only Murders in the Building. Ariana Grande nominated for Wicked. No big surprise there. Felicity Jones, The Brutalist. Guy Pearce was also acknowledged for The Brutalist, a supporting actor. Margaret Qualley for The Substance, another film that is getting attention. Isabella Rossellini for Conclave, and Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez. Another sort of conversation. I would argue she's more of a lead performance, but again, that's just the way that they have decided to iron out their campaign trail. Anything you want to say about just those supporting actor actress categories across the board?
No, man, not too much. Very happy to see Daniel Deadwyler here, of course. But I also was a little bit surprised I have to bring it up. Zoe Saldana is like, whoa, supporting?
Wait, Deadwyler wasn't nominated. She didn't get the piano lesson.
Nominated? No, sorry.
Yeah, the piano lesson didn't get anything, unfortunately.
Yeah,
which we talked about last week was just like, is it going to go anywhere? And it's not even acknowledged here.
Yeah, it felt like a glow pick. I think that's why I was like in my head, like, damn, well, yeah. It felt like a glow pick, but they didn't go through with it. But yeah, man, glad to see. Yeah, there's always Saldana thing is just like a little weird, like, supporting, because it's like kind of her movie for a lot of it. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But I yeah, I don't know how these will go either. Supporting actor, really cool. I think to see Karen Culkin get nominated, like you said, it kind of is a Cole performance, but it is what it is. There, Clarence Macklin, Sing Sing, hell yeah, very happy to see. I think the wait, did he get it? Pretty
No,
sure he
no, he
got it.
didn't get nominated.
Oh, he
No.
didn't get it either.
Sing Sing, the only nomination Sing Sing got was Coleman Domingo. It was
Was
largely
Coleman
ignored.
Domingo? Yeah,
Yeah.
man. I'm looking at my list sideways is what I'm doing. I'm like, dang, oh wait, that's not right. But yeah, man. I think everything. The Denzel stuff is still weird, but whatever. It is what it is. I feel like I knew he was going to be there regardless. So we'll see what happens in that category too. It's very interesting. It's not one of the stronger ones I've seen to me for a while. So we'll see what happens here.
I love that Denzel will probably be in the building for this, but yeah, no, I mean the again the perceived snubs, no Danielle Deadweiler, no Clarence Divine I Macklin for Sing
Mm-hmm.
Sing, and no Anjanae Ellis Taylor for Nickel Boys, and a lot
Yeah.
of attention has been paid to her particular performance in that movie, so I know a lot of people are a bit disappointed by the outcome of that. I do want to just talk about Sing Sing quickly, and I'm briefly mention this, but one nomination here, and it is for Coleman Domingo, and unfortunately, I think that might kind of be the case in the story moving forward because
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite movies of the year, but I just really do not understand the release strategy and rollout from
Mm-hmm.
A24 and what they did with this movie. They released it in, I think, less than 1,000 theaters initially over the summer. And then the following weeks, they rolled it back and released it in less theaters than that. And then pretty much for the majority of the fall, if not all of the fall, it was not available to watch anywhere. You couldn't rent it. You couldn't buy it. No
Mm-hmm.
streaming, no movie theater rollout or release. Now,
They're trying to
in
re-release it.
January, they're going to re-release it. I
Yeah.
can also say it will be streaming soon, very, very soon. It will be available wide to watch. I can say that, but I think it might be too little, too late, and that's really,
Mm-hmm.
really unfortunate to me. I'm just not entirely sure what A24 was thinking there. Perhaps this could be a similar situation to what we see with Netflix, where it's like, hey, we're going to pick one title to really,
Mm.
hitch our bets to, which I don't think is a bad strategy. I think it's pretty sound because when you divide the attention across multiple movies, you're less likely to
Yeah.
win. And it feels like The
Mm-hmm.
Brutalist has kind of been their movie that they are really championing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Sing Sing was somewhat of a, I guess, somewhat of a casualty because of that. But I'm disappointed. I'm definitely disappointed by that because I think it could have done a little bit more beyond just one nomination here. And again, I don't have really the highest hopes that it'll do a ton as we start to talk about the Academy and what it might get acknowledged for there or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Best director. So overall here we have six more nominees. We have Jacques Audiard for Emilia Perez, Sean Baker for Anora, Edward Berger for Conclave, Brady Corbett for The Brutalist, Coralie Farge for The Substance, and Pael Kapadia for All We Imagine Is Light, which is an international film from India, which got a couple of nominations here as well, but they have not submitted that movie. India has not submitted that movie for Academy Awards contention, which is interesting. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the best director field? I know you shared some thoughts earlier about John Chu and Denis Villeneuve, but what do you think about the field here?
Yeah, it's just weird that it's almost like I don't know. It's weird that two of the are at least in terms of Academy Award talk, Wicked and Dune seem to be some of the bigger, blockbustery kind of movies, and both those directors are missing here. That just felt I don't know. I think a little weird to me. I don't think they'll get left out at the Academy Awards. At least I hope not. But I will also say I think some of these Best Director awards do make sense. Sean Baker for Nora, of course. Edward Berger for Conclave might make it in. Brandy Corbett is definitely making it in for The Brutalist. Coralie Farge, I was really happy to see. Again, anything substance, I'm like, hell yeah. At least you got the nomination. So I was really happy to see that exists as well. But yeah, just a very, I don't know. It's just not what I thought this best director category would look like. I understand they got to pick six, but it's like, wow, you left out two of the biggest movies and two of the biggest directors of the year.
So here's what I'll say. This is also interesting coming off of NBR because John Chu won Best Director for Wicked there, and Wicked also won Best Picture. these are things I don't agree with. I don't think John Chu should be in this conversation. I
Yeah.
don't. I don't think he should be acknowledged for best director. Sorry.
Hmm.
I'm just not on that train. And I think the problem that we're seeing with Dune Part 2, which I knew that this was going to happen. It was something that we
Hmm.
briefly talked about. It's not a surprise per se, but this is not a completed story yet. There's still
Hmm.
one more movie. And this is a part 2. And Dune 1 was heavily acknowledged. I don't think he got, a best director, not even for Dune 1, but the story's not complete. And that never bodes well when you're talking about serialized stories and serialized films that have yet to be completed. That just doesn't bode well. We're seeing Hans Zimmer and that whole conversation come up. They've already been disqualified for original score from the
Hmm.
Academy because too much of the score from the first film is
The
bled
first
over into
one.
the second film.
Hmm.
Um, at this point, I'm like, who cares? You already won an Oscar. Like, well, why do we even care to get nominated again for something that does feel
Right.
similar? But yeah, when you're doing multiple movies and everybody knows, like, yeah, the story is yet to be finished and complete. Like, it's always going to be hard to win over voters, I think, in that respect. But the Wicked conversation again, I just like. You said you think John Chu is going to get a Best Director nomination at the Oscars. So if we look at this list here, I
Hmm.
think Jacques Audiard is in for Emilia, Perez probably, Sean Baker for Anora, Edward Berger for Conclave, and Brady Corbett for The Brutalist. Those feel like 4 very, very likely contenders. You would say your 5th spot would go to John Chu for the Academy Awards?
Again, this is it's not a want, but it is a prediction. I do think if they do put Wicked in the best picture category, then John Chu would also be in the best director category. I do.
That's interesting
I
because
think I
I
think
don't
the
think
Academy would put him in there.
I don't
Yep.
think that's going to happen at all. We did not see last year with Barbie that was nominated for Best Picture, and Greta Gerwig was not nominated for Best Director. And I think
Yeah. No.
Barbie
Yeah.
and
That happened.
Wicked are comparable in that respect.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get it by any stretch. Especially not even over. I think Denis Villeneuve is more likely to get nominated, even after everything I said. I think he would more likely get
I
the
would
5th
hope.
spot over John Chu. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like again, I don't really care all that much because I think this field right here is pretty
Hmm.
strong, and the Coralie Farge of it is again it's nice to see as well here because I don't see probably a ton of repeat acknowledgement from other bodies as we move ahead.
Yeah.
But outside of the movies, there is this cinematic and box office achievement award that they are bringing back. This is the second time that they've done this where they are, I guess, awarding a film that performed exceptionally at the box office. Their rules are that a film has to make at least $150 million worldwide at the box office, and at least 100 million of that 150 million has to come from domestic box office ticket sales. And the movies here that are being nominated are Alien Romulus, Beetlejuice, Deadpool and Wolverine, Gladiator 2, Inside Out 2, Twisters, Wicked, and The Wild Robot.
Hmm.
All hugely successful movies from a box office standpoint. However, when we talk about Dune Part 2, the 4th highest grossing movie of the year, it's not here. So, again, what is this category? What are the rules? What are we talking about? Hell, even Venom: The Last Dance, which was a little slow out the gate, but has made some really, really
It made
respectable
money.
money. It's on
Hmm.
its way to $500 million worldwide. Not acknowledged here. So again, I just ask, what is this category? What is it here for? Why are we doing it? What's the point of cinematic and box office achievement?
I don't know, man. It's like it's like how do we give movies that we know are not going to get the the RT awards some recognition, but they're blockbusters and they may. I don't know. I really don't know what this is. Still make up, makeshift, make believe category here, and I honestly still don't know why we're doing it. And again, to me, if Dune's not here, it's a joke. I honestly don't know what we're doing, so that's where I'll leave it.
Is there any chance Inside Out 2 does not win, considering it's the number 1 highest grossing movie of the year? Like,
Didn't we go through that before? Like, once you just pick the one that made the most money, if it's just like cinematic and box office is in the title, wouldn't you just go with the one that has the biggest box office? I don't know. Maybe they go with the one that's the most surprising how much money it made. I have no idea. I could not tell you. They just be making stuff up over there, dude. I really don't know.
yeah, and if we're talking about probably most surprising, I think on the list, I'd say the most surprising is probably The Wild Robot. That's held
Yeah.
steady for such a long time at the box. You can still see it in theaters like right now. And it's made
Hmm.
really, really good money. That's what I would consider the most surprising, but it's also, I believe, out of all of these films, technically still made the least amount of money.
Yeah.
across the board. So
Hmm.
as you said, like what are the rules here?
What are the
What are
rules?
we making up? But I don't think anybody truly has an answer. And just quickly with the TV stuff again, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but for best drama series, we have The Day of the Jackal on Peacock, The Diplomat on Netflix, Mr. and Mrs. Smith from Prime Video, Shogun from FX and Hulu, Slow Horses from Apple TV Plus, and Squid Game from Netflix. Squid Game's not even out, so I'm assuming that they have screeners and that they've watched it and decided to put it in here. I hope that's the case.
Hmm.
Otherwise, there might be some more scandal there. But
Yeah, because it's like what?
yeah, it's definitely not out yet. But yeah, any thoughts on best drama series?
No, man. I'm just rooting. I'll tell you now. I'm rooting for Shogun. And some of those acting categories that Mr. and Mrs. Smith got, of course, Donald Glover, and Miss Erskine have been nominated for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I just really like that show, so rooting for those two most of all. But I think all of this makes a ton of sense, to be honest, and really cool to see him here. Yeah, I didn't know how Mr. and Mrs. Smith was going to pan out in award season, but I'm like, oh yeah, we're here, so cool.
It's good to see it leg out in this way. And then best musical or comedy series, we have Abbott Elementary, The Bear, The Gentleman, Hacks, Nobody Wants This, and Only Murders in the Building. I think all usual suspects that were likely to see. You just talked about Nobody Wants This, didn't you? From Netflix. Yeah,
Yeah, I did.
that's actually rising to the top across the board in quite a lot of conversations. I think it was in the AFI top 10 television series of the year as well. So a lot of people are
Wow.
definitely giving that attention. I I truthfully, what's interesting here is that we did see at the Emmys, the Bear was upset by Hacks. I don't know if you think there might
Hmm.
be a repeat here, or if the Bear, because it is like the leading nominated series here, if you think that that just might be sort of a shoe in for that show to walk away with it.
I don't know, man. Hacks was like kind of cleaning up. I will say, again, I don't know the ins and outs of how the Globes, always works, but they historically do love the Bear, so we'll have to see how it goes here, man. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Hacks was like, yeah, we're gonna win again. It would not surprise me one bit.
Certainly. So we'll certainly have to see how this all shapes up and shapes out. But the Golden Globes will be airing on Sunday, January 5th. I believe it'll be on CBS, and we'll definitely come back and talk about all the reactions and the fallout from that award show. But if you have any thoughts on the Golden Globe nominations, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.